Hello, and welcome to Talking Shop, a series of fun conversations with consummate concert artists, composers, opera singers, and choreographers, my favorite people in the entire world. Today, I'm so thrilled to have with us lyric soprano Martha Eason. Martha is a lyric coloratura soprano whose performances are characterized by her strong presence and ability to convey emotion through her singing. After representing the Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University at the Kennedy Center performance, she was awarded the Georgina Joshi International Fellowship that facilitated her now thriving career in Germany. She has performed a litany of roles in prestigious houses and is an ensemble member at the Badisches Staatstheater in Karlsruhe. This season, she makes her debut in Daegu, South Korea as Violetta in La Traviata. There's so much more I could say about Martha, but she has a wonderful website, and I want to start our conversation. So, Martha, thank you so much for joining us today. And I wanted to ask you the first question I ask all of my first-time guests, which is, what does being an opera singer and all the other things you do, what does all of that mean to you personally?
I actually think this is such a hard question to answer. And I think it's one the answer has changed for me over the course of my career so far. And I'm painfully aware that the answer will keep changing for me as I develop as a human being. The point where I am right now, I feel like the answer to that question is that I am am trying as hard as it is to develop myself as a creative person or an artist, and singing is the medium that I'm currently using to do that. And that's been a kind of a change for me after, graduating from school, those first few contracts, you're just kind of figuring out what the world is and what the industry is, where you might like fit into it. But I think what opera singing means to me, it's like the current medium that I'm using to create and say the current things I feel like I want to say as a human or that are like unique to me. I write as well, and that's like just another medium. And I'm trying to view all these different things as just the medium in which I'm creating art with.
So, how does it really fulfill your life? What does it give you on a personal level that just makes you not I can't wait to get up in the morning? What is that element of this for you?
For me, I'm also a runner and I'm really into athletics, especially endurance athletics. And singing is exactly the same for me. It just physically feels good. And I think that's why I gravitated. I really wanted a fest job because I wanted to just sing whatever it was all the time. I wanted to be in a million different productions. That's definitely changed, the older my body gets, and then I have preferences about what roles I want to take. But literally, I think it wasn't necessarily opera as the art form, although I fell in love with a lot of different composers and the different stories and the costumes, and that it's such a physical manifestation of music because you're acting it, you're singing it, the text is important, it requires technique, you have to train like your body, your voice, everything to do it. And there's this added element of text because I also loved it's like a sport with poetry. I think that was like what I really wanted to do every day.
So let's go back just a little bit, maybe, whatever, wherever you want to start. Tell us your story, how you fell in love with opera or chose opera as your uh, medium for poetry was, or what you just said, your
Or
poetry,
yeah, sport with
your sport
poetry.
with poetry. Thank you. Yes. And, just how did this develop in your life?
Yeah, I grew up in Southwest Virginia in a little town called Abingdon, and there is no orchestra there. I never saw an opera until I was like 19. I was on a date and I went to the Metropolitan Opera. This was the first thing I ever saw was Renee Fleming, and I was like, "What?" So even though I hadn't really ever heard orchestra until until I went to undergrad university. I was surrounded by music all the time. My mom is like a natural. musician. She was a high school teacher until she retired. But she was one of those people who can just sit down and play the piano. I grew up thinking that was normal. She'd just sit down and read anything.
Wow.
She has a beautiful natural voice. And growing up in Appalachia, I'm also like exposed to a lot of Appalachian music, bluegrass, and it was music was constantly around. I was taking piano lessons since I was young. I played the Celtic harp for a while, and there's just always music. And it really made me fall in love with singing. So like the physical act of singing is, the sport with poetry thing. I was like, wow, this just feels really good. I like doing it with people. I was such a choir kid. And I just fell in love with singing. I was like, how can I sing higher? How can I sing fast? There was a radio show in Southwest Virginia that was about opera. And I started taking voice lessons around 14 or 15. And the guy who ran the station invited me over, and he had every important opera recording known to mankind.
Wow.
And he was like, I will teach you all of these different operas. And we just sat and we listened to recording after recording, singer after singer after singer. And I guess I was around 13 when I heard Beverly Sills for the first time. And I was like, how do you sing so fast? And how do you sing so high? I have to learn how to do that. How does a human like do that athletic thing? And that's really when I started voice lessons around that age, and I never stopped taking voice lessons. I went to university and, started as pre-med, and then I thought I would minor in French. I thought I would, study music, but double major in economics and, the whole thing when you're that age. What do I do? But I never thought I would become an opera singer, to be honest. I just sang, and then I ended up doing church jobs. I thought, oh, I can pay my bills by singing. I'll keep doing that. And when I graduated from undergrad, I had this moment where I thought, okay, do I apply for graduate schools, for singing, or do I go get an MBA? What are my options? And my choir professor who had graduated from Indiana University said, you should try. Just try, go get your master's. And um, from there, it was a lot of figuring out how to fund it. I think that's something I talk a lot about. It's really, really important to talk about how to fund your education, if that's right for you. I took a year off, and long story short, I ended up at IU where I really, I think for the first time in my master's degree, saw, oh, people make a living as an opera singer. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, it is pretty
Yeah.
cool. Absolutely. And I love, I mean, Beverly Sills was my inspiration as well. So we share that. It's, yes, dear bubbles.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. You said you write, and you have a wonderful Substack, which I enjoy reading. I don't get a chance to read everything, but I really loved your top six articles that you put together at the end of last year, 2025. And so I wanted to kind of go into those areas that you addressed because I thought, man, this is so perfect for us to talk about because it's just an encapsulation of everything that people are facing as artists these days, particularly opera singers. So um, I wanted to just, you know, talk about that. And one of the things that struck me most is the importance of staying true to who you are as an artist. That really, really strikes a chord with me. And I'd love to get your perspective. Why is that such an important thing? And how did you come to realize that?
Yeah, to be honest about this, I really have only started to come to terms with it. I'm in my mid 30s now. And I always thought, there are people on stage, 27, 28 years old, that you would be a developed artist somehow by 30 because the trend for hiring opera singers, that, up spiral happens, around the late 20s, 30 years old. And or that's what I thought. And now found that that's a little bit different. And I realize only now that in my mid 30s, am I starting to try to understand myself as an artist and sing roles that are true to myself, sing with a technique that's true to myself. everything before this was largely influenced by feeling like, okay, I'm supposed to sing a certain way. And that's all valid. Like there are good techniques and good ways to do things and things that like generally work. Absolutely. But I think it's a pretty normal trajectory to like, I feel like it's always later than we think that we start to realize I have something to say. I'm not just here to repeat or to not bring ideas to the table. And that the result is more effective, especially when we're the ones on stage, when we bring ourselves to the stage, to the story, and then it turns into a totally different thing because we have life experiences.
Yeah.
But I think I've been a little too afraid to do that until my mid 30s, you know? It takes a
Yeah.
while to find a voice.
Is that because of maybe conductors' expectations, other types of expectations, that we feel we have to maybe make our artistry fit with what they want us to sound like or want us to be? What's the fine line there? How do we balance that?
Yeah, I've thought about this a bit. This is going to deserve a Substack deep dive.
I love
Um,
it.
like, where is the line between collaboration and like people pleasing, I guess, in a way, or just serving others' expectations? Often I realized when in a position where I'm serving other people's expectations, it's usually because I have some old insecurity baggage about my vocal technique, or if maybe my voice is too small for a role, or they think this or they think that. Usually I've made all that up in my head. It's a little bit of, performance mindset. Um, and I'm allowed to be a little bit more collaborative. But I've also noticed it really changes, and that's totally okay in different rehearsal settings. So I've been in rehearsal settings where collaboration is like the main thing. And those are my favorite situations where the expectation is that I show up with my own stories and my own ideas. And it takes so much more work and kind of arguing in the rehearsal process.
Yeah.
Like there's disagreement, it can get uncomfortable. Like the opera that I'm currently doing is Breaking the Waves, Missy Mazzoli, and this is my fourth production with the same director, and it's very collaborative. And so I was like, get excited.
Yeah.
And then there are other productions where the professional thing to do, you realize you read the room, is to kind of do what you're told, make sure you are doing your staging on time, like serving that director's ideas.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just a totally different way of working. And I realized I don't enjoy that as much, although there is an enjoyable aspect of like testing your own skills that you've built in that scenario, and seeing how that goes. So yeah, I think it's a fine line between serving other people and collaboration.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like it sounds like maybe it's an individual thing. We each, it's kind of it's a trial by error kind of thing. You have to test things and I feel like as artists, even in a setting where we're kind of fulfilling the director's expectations, I mean, it's still our voice. It's still our interpretation of that music. So there's that to cling to, as far as being true to ourselves. So yeah, but we could talk about that all day long, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Um, and of course, acting is a huge part of the arts, and particularly in opera, I think, and in dance. And I have studied method acting. I don't know. I just wanted to ask you, how does acting kind of, what role does it play in the development of your own characters in these operas? These characters, a lot of times, I mean, like in Breaking the Waves, people are not as familiar with those characters. But then,
Mhm.
like in La Traviata,
Yeah.
everyone loves Violetta. They know everything that So, how does acting come into play here, and how important is it?
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, I came over to Germany about 10 years ago, and as part of my training in the US, I actually had no acting training as part of the degree at IU. Since then, they've added it and they have really great people doing that. And I'm so glad because the market in Germany, when I came over, I was a little shocked because it was really expression driven. You wanted to move people more than vocal technique. It was, you know, make an impression or have a personality or um like my brain is in German now. Your acting and your delivery of the character was as important, if not sometimes more important than the singing technique.
Mhm.
And auditioning for young artists in the US at the time, I don't know if it's changed now. It was definitely like voice driven.
Right.
And so when I came to Germany, I had to learn a lot. I like a lot. When I wasn't booking work, it was because they're like, she's not a good actress. She's not a good actress. And I'm very happy at how far I've come with that. I think that now I'm maybe more of a acting driven singer than a singer driven singer. Sometimes it depends on the role. But I found my personal way through it was really going to the textbooks like Uta Hagen, like looking at all of these, especially the more German schools of acting, because that's how the singers are sometimes trained here. And then I dug a lot into text and diction. That was like my secret door for me to kind of understand and get past my own insecurities, was digging into the text and diction of the piece, which kind of connected me back to my vocal technique, ironically, where I feel, safe because I've learned it and I've trained it. And connecting acting to vocal technique through text was really like my key that felt organic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that concept because I think anytime we can connect all the dots together and bring it all together for ourselves, it's just presents a much gives us a much stronger scaffolding, so to speak, to work within.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hear, so often from a lot of artists that money shouldn't be the focus for our art. And yet, we all are trying to make a living doing what we love most, really being who we are, speaking of staying true to ourselves. This is a big part of it. It certainly has been in my life. So I know there's a lot of quote maybe glory in doing art for art's sake, but
Mhm.
you talk about in one of your Substacks treating your career like the business it is. And that's another thing that struck me. We just don't hear that nearly often enough. Would you expand on these thoughts for us and give us some of the most important aspects of this and how to balance that with the deep focus necessary for us to really develop our artistry um, to the point that we want it to be, and also to just leave that door open for us to be, to reach the potential that we might have.
Yeah, I have so much to say on the subject as I'm also in the middle of still forming some newer thoughts about it, because I think things are changing rapidly. I think the first change that it's clear that we as artists are not divorced from the world around us. Like we just went through the budget cuts at the Met, the theater I'm at, it's public knowledge. There's budget cuts here all across Germany, and not small ones. And it's going to affect the next few seasons and the future of opera. It already has. And when you look at the numbers, there's a great book. The English translation is Earn Your Fee for a High C. And the authors are under ghost writer names because they're still in the industry. But it was written, I think, in 2016. I'm not exactly sure.
Mhm.
But the data in there was already showing that fest singers, so singers who are in a salaried position, which is what I'm currently in, um, are taking on more and more production, so more work for stagnating or declining pay. And ensemble size, so those singers who are fest at a German theater are shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And the the truth of the matter is that it's good to recognize the reality we're in is that stress in the system, the artists live that stress. At the end of the month, they feel it with their bodies when they're doing 70 productions instead of 70 performances a season instead of 40.
Mhm.
They're getting the vocal injuries. They're, burning out, trying to keep up with the workload. And I think that's kind of the first thing to be aware of. And that awareness just allows you to make really good decisions so that you can stay doing what you want to do. I think that's the important thing is that everyone's in a different situation and they want different things out of life. And there's maybe a different level of financial security that people are comfortable with.
Mhm.
And to just understand the reality so you can make really great decisions that keep you more able to do what you want to do, like in your life and with your singing and with your art. I think that's really the key. And so, understanding the reality of the industry financially, where it's going in the future, where it has been, and then understanding what that means for you financially. Um, and I think, are thankfully moving out of this situation where, especially with opera singers, um, it's absolutely okay to have multiple jobs, that you're doing a production, but you have, a desk job during the day to stay afloat. And I think that's really, really healthy because it's very difficult to walk on stage and perform when you're stressed, when
Yeah,
you're deeply stressed about life. That kind of fear breaks you out of creativity. Like your brain really can't be creative when you're stressed.
yeah,
And I think that the more ways artists have to reduce that stress, we should be allowed to do whatever that is.
yeah. I mean, I totally get that. And, the difference so much in Europe and United States. Europe has always been so supportive of the arts, even, through the governments of these nations. And I guess you do see that changing a bit, which is really kind of sad, to that bastion of support, even is being affected by it. And I guess it's just modern day economic realities. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah. So, and you're doing several things. I think you have a social media company I think where you coach and support other artists in learning how to post effectively and build their careers and their presence online. You also, as you said, you write the Substack. I don't know what else you do, but that sounds like a tremendous amount already. So in one way, I see how it takes the stress off, and yet you're trying to balance all these different things. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you keep the balance from doing all these other things from becoming another stressor?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I'm learning. The seed and story is the social media is very early days. And I try to choose things with like my Substack and seed and story, the social media work, and my singing, um, that they all like go somehow together. So my brain isn't like switching back and forth. And that the marketing has really been an organic like extension of, running your career like a business. I learned a lot posting on social media. It opened up like jobs, connections with people I would have never had otherwise. And it was really empowering for my career. And I realized, okay, marketing is part of running your own business, your own career as a business. And so it feels like it kind of fits together because as I discover something as a performer on social media that works well, then I am already in this community that I can easily share it with by just hopping on and being like, blah, blah, you should post this, blah, blah. Okay,
Yeah.
send. And
Yeah.
it's out in the world and it can help other people with really low cost to me.
Mhm.
Um, and the Substack honestly is after, 10 years as a fest singer, you just start to amass ideas and information. And I was like, if I don't get this out of my head, I'm going to go nuts.
So that's a cathartic thing for you. It's a therapeutic thing for you. That's awesome. And it helps the
Yes.
rest of us. Yes, absolutely. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
So there are other things like I have been doing career coachings and I've pared that back because you can kind of feel, okay, this gives me energy. This kind of drains a little bit for whatever reason in the moment. So I kind of am trying to be more aware of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot, and yet, I really can identify with all of it being maybe different sides of the same thing. I'm composing, I'm performing piano, I'm performing opera, and then there's the rest of life too,
Yeah.
so it's just all of this stuff. And I want to switch a little bit to the times we're living in for the arts. It's kind of a challenging time as far as, I guess, audience is concerned. Um, Opera seems, though, to be experiencing some type of resurgence, and a lot of artists are thinking more about their art as a way to offer hope and to shine light on things in our society that are currently working to alienate us from each other. I think no one can argue that we're not living in very divisive times. Um, what is the societal power of art? Does opera have a special role in that? And what is the best way for us to use our art to benefit society, especially, considering the environment we're living in today?
I think that's the one of the biggest questions we're about to grapple with. And we've grappled with it in the past, and incredible musical compositions and moments have come out of questions like this. When we go back to World War II, the end of World War II, the amount of compositions coming out of that time and the reasons they were created and the situations in which that music was created. And then I think also about America, like Charles Ives, um, writing some music to really try to connect people. Um, and I think that opera is going to struggle with that because I think there's a split between what we know as the traditional repertoire. I think now is the time where, if you're going through a breakup or something's going on personally, please get me a ticket to Bohème. I want to sit there and cry about it and blah.
Yes.
Yeah, and or like, if it's, a summer day and I'm feeling really good, like I want to go see Don Pasquale and just have a good laugh and a nice glass of wine. That is more and more not the daily experience a lot of us are having. And there is opera for that. And I'm so thankful like to be in Breaking the Waves right now. And that's the piece that is I'm in the performance kind of for that. And then I moved to Pagliacci is my next. I'm very thankful I don't have any, Fledermaus or something to perform right now because it would feel um, tone deaf to the times that we're living in a bit.
Mhm.
And I do think there is the argument that I am aware in Germany sometimes our audience is coming to escape.
Yeah.
And I think that's a valuable use for opera. But I also think some of the pieces that really connect to what our modern day experience is. So singing Bess and Breaking the Waves right now, a woman who is silenced by ideology. It's a very brutal opera. The audience generally every night is like just crying at the end because it really connects with what, like, my favorite line is you cannot love words, you cannot be in love with a word, you can only love another human being.
Wow.
And every night I get to sing this, and I'm like, this is
Yeah.
cathartic. And I know the audience gets it, and we are getting this right now, and we need this moment together. And I think that there is absolute magic in that. So I think that's opera as the art form. But I also think because singing is a sport, and I think sports are like movement is incredibly healing. I think just normal singing, anybody, not even if you want a career, if you never want to, if you just want to sing in the shower, I think it's incredibly healthy today when we're kind of bombarded by a lot of very stressful things.
Yeah.
Uh, it's like taking a deep breath. Sometimes it can really calm you down. And so I want a little bit more of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally relate to that too. Um, I guess I feel hopeful because I see a lot of my fellow artists writing pieces to address social concerns right now. I see operas being written and performed. Damien Jeter just wrote, and we premiered last spring his Loving versus Virginia. And oh my gosh, I mean, I can't even describe that experience.
Mhm.
He's very socially minded and writes a lot of work with that, and not just him. There are I think there's an opera talking about that just was performed by Virginia Opera Theater um, um, talking about, I don't remember the name of it. It's about Elizabeth Van Lew. And I don't know if you know who she was. She was the daughter of a Confederate general and became a trader in her
Mhm.
hometown of Richmond, Virginia, where I live.
Yeah.
And, it's quite a story. And so there are works like that being created. And yet I also feel that there's such a place for traditional opera, and even some of the new operas who are, mainstays that we can
Mhm.
go to and have that cathartic cry, or even just go for hope, because, um, I certainly wasn't present then, but during World War II, that's where all these wonderful songs, and the troops were being, in the USO, especially on the US side, and in Europe, being entertained. And to me, art has a wonderful way of giving us hope and bringing us together for these types of things. So I just feel like there's so many aspects of this question that can come into play. And I love what you said about, if you're feeling like this, you want to go see this opera. And I do hope that that's going to help keep the art form alive, and actually, music in general, classical music, especially in general. Um, so you talk about the endurance necessary to weather being unseen. What is the key to longevity in pursuing a career, being open to possibilities we don't haven't seen before, being willing to listen to the universe when it shows up, or shows us a path that we might not really be excited about seeing, like, no, 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 but I want to do this, and yet, it's compelling, how do we navigate that, and how do we use all of that to realize our own dreams much more robustly than we might have thought before?
Yeah. Oh, this is such a good question. I think one of the hardest lessons I've learned that I've heard a lot of uh, singers, 10, 20 years ahead of me are like, you're going to learn this lesson eventually. And I finally learned it, the art of saying no. Um, and I think there's a time and a place for that at the beginning of your career. You really can't afford to say no.
Mhm.
Um, but now I look back and I realize that wasn't quite true. That I'll only say yes if it's really within your values. But if your ego is telling you, oh, that role is not big enough for me, blah, 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 don't say yes. Don't listen to that. But if your values are just like, I I really don't think this is the right thing for me, something doesn't feel right, to like learn how to listen to my gut instinct is something that I feel like is the biggest life hack in increasing longevity and endurance, because those projects that drain you, that aren't fulfilling you artistically, um, they take away vocal health, they take away your sleep, they're stressful. And there are times when you have to do a project like that. I'm not saying, say no to all of it. And there's always something to be learned from those situations, but I'm learning, when it's the right decision for me to say no. Um, and I also think trying to have a plan and a clear, like build some clear goals, but also being okay when the plan changes.
Yeah, yeah, it's big. That's very
Yeah.
big. Yeah. Um, I, just in thinking about myself, because 2.5 years ago, I accidentally discovered I could write music and that I could do it pretty well. And, my dreams were always performance. I didn't, the, my desire was thwarted when I was younger. So having this second chance is just something I'm relishing and going for with everything I have. And I was like, what? No, this isn't, but it's opened an entirely new world for me. And it's actually opened the door much wider to performing. So it's
Hmm.
very ironic. And I'm only saying that as an example of, like, you never know what's out there for you. You just don't know what's available. And I think so much a part of being an artist is the combination of having the courage to throw ourselves out there, and also the willingness to be vulnerable, um,
Hmm.
and and maybe a not so safe space. We were talking about, you were talking about staying true to yourself and having to be subject to a director's desires. I know that can be very hard and very intimidating. I want to go back to that a little bit and maybe get a little bit different take. What would you say to young opera singers who are faced with those situations, who maybe at this point in their careers have to be more subject to a director's desires than their own? Um, is it a matter of just keeping on, and you'll get what you want at some point? How would you advise them looking back at your own career?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because I think the tricky part is that the unfortunate truth about this industry, and it's like, and I say this only because it's great when we recognize the reality, so then we can make good decisions that help us keep going,
Yeah.
is that really singers can keep on auditioning, keep on trying, and it may never work out because it's not them. It's such a hard industry, and there's so much more than just being the best person in the room. Um, that's the unfortunate truth. And it's like, okay, so we know that. How do I stay so that I keep loving this thing and I keep creating opportunities or looking for that door where behind it is something I never could have imagined and is way greater, or it reaches our goals in a way that we couldn't have seen coming. Um, and I think I like to take big ideas and like break them down a little bit more in the moment logistically.
Mhm.
So if you're in a rehearsal or if you're in a audition, is to start, I wish I had done this earlier, to start understanding when you feel you're starting to get really nervous and you're starting to get panicked, is to, I feel like everyone's different, but to try to learn the tricks and the ways that you can get your body to calm down,
Yeah.
and your brain will follow, and you'll find yourself making different decisions than you would have in panic.
Hmm.
Um, and you'll come out of that rehearsal being like, oh, I never thought I could go that far, but I could because I was calm. I
Yeah.
could calm myself down and keep going.
Yeah.
And your boundaries start to change because you realize you're stronger. You just, that moment of calming yourself down is such a key thing as a performer. I think that would be like the trick.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reality is we never arrive as artists. We're always growing, we're always developing. Things are changing, our bodies are changing, our views on life are changing because of just the experience of living. So I feel like that's something that is really special in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And just keeping that vision in mind. And I think so many things you said are really important about being willing. Maybe you don't know what's coming, maybe that's a good thing. And sometimes even if you're subject to a director's wishes, you might learn something you wouldn't have
Yeah.
learned otherwise. You might that might cause a development that you might not have received otherwise. So I think looking for that golden nugget in everything that we're doing is really, really important. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Um, let's talk a little bit about education. I loved your story because you started falling in love with opera about the same time I did, 13, 14, 15 years, 16 years old. You were taking voice lessons and heard Beverly Sills. And it's so funny because when you said, I think you went to an opera when you were 19, my dad actually took me to see, I lived in Memphis, Tennessee at the time. And
Oh, my dad's from Memphis.
Yes, the Met still has their regional auditions there, I think. But at that point in time, they also did three performances in conjunction with those auditions. It was amazing. And I loved Joan Sutherland. And for my 18th birthday, my dear sweet dad took me, and this is in the days where we wore long gowns, and I love that's coming back. But I saw Tales of Hoffman. Joan Sutherland was singing, and of course Richard Bunning was conducting.
Oh
And
my
we had
gosh.
seats, maybe 6, 7 rows back. It was incredible. Um,
Oh,
so all of that to say, obviously I wanted to get a voice degree. I want to do this, and there is such a debate in education right now, not just in the music world, but I think on so many fronts. Is college worth it? Is it going to get you where you want to go? I think that that educational system is in such turmoil and transition right now. And yet, because you were at IU and you
Hmm.
were able to perform at the Kennedy Center, you got this award and you're where you are. So let's talk about that a little bit. Um, is it, I know, the reality is that not everyone who goes to college is going to be, an opera singer, be able to make a living out of that. But what role does that play? How far do you go? What are the signposts along the way, maybe?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most important questions for young singers considering how to go about their education. Because at that age, not a lot of us are thinking, okay, how is this financially going to affect my future? What can I afford? Um, they might not be aware of personal finance and like what's possible. And I've been a little bit critical of higher education when it comes to conservatories in my writing. Yet at the same time, I'm the product of IU, and I had a great experience while I was there. I had a fantastic teacher. I really am thankful to her for my vocal technique. I met incredible musicians. It's really a fantastic school, and I was a GA. I was on scholarship there. So for me, it made sense to go. But the more and more younger singers I'm talking to, and now paired with living here in Europe and my European colleagues, they don't have debt. Uh, they, are getting their master's degree for the price of like one semester at IU,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
and if I had known, that I could go study in Berlin or Vienna for, a sixth of the price of a IU master's degree. Um, I might have made different decisions because not only is it a master's degree in Europe, but it's also going to help you with your visa in the country where there's more opera being performed than anywhere else in the world.
Mhm.
You're going to acquire the language just way better. And those are your two barriers to enter the industry really are visa, working visa in Germany, and do you speak the language? Um, Actually, for a soloist to have a degree doesn't matter. That's the other thing is as an example, I have a friend who went to the University of Virginia, then went to Columbia and got a master's degree in economics, all the while taking voice lessons with a great teacher, worked as in consulting for a while, and then just joined the ensemble of the cpeople Dresden, has a career as a soloist. Never needed a master's degree in music and has this, extra skill set as well. So I think I've kind of been critical, even though I'm a product of it, because I've seen how many other options there are that I want to put out in the world because if are not coming from a family or in a situation where you can afford that, to know that there are other avenues to accomplish your dreams is quite a wonderful thing to realize in a way.
Yeah.
So my experience was great at IU, and I have a lot of beautiful things to say, but it might not be an appropriate avenue for everyone, but there are, I have a colleague who's a former electrician.
I love that.
Incredible singer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's important to realize too, is that whatever you need to do, to make your life possible and to be able to do what you love most, I think there's certainly validity to that. But you just said something that really caught my attention. I think it's super, super important. Let's talk about teachers. Because I can see very readily how having the right teacher or and you don't just have one teacher for life, usually you just go through different teachers, but having that one teacher who has the influence in the world who can connect you and to me that's obviously just as valid or another venue, another avenue through which you can attain this type of career. But how do you find, let's go back to when you were 13, 15. How do you find a good teacher? Because a teacher can make you or break you. They can either believe in you or they can be so critical that you don't even want to go to your lesson anymore. A teacher can help you love practice. A teacher can help you learn how to practice, or a
Yeah.
teacher can just say, like one of mine did. I would go into my lesson and said, "Let me hear your high C," and it was like, yeah, exactly. It was like,
Without warming up.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I did warm up before, but I'm like, well, I wasn't quite ready for this. Yeah. So,
Oh,
um, how do you find that right teacher? How do you know that someone really knows what they're talking about, is not going to damage your voice, and also give you the emotional support that you need? Um, all of that.
this is a super important question. I'll say my history with teachers is I when I started at 13, 14, my piano teacher gave me voice lessons and she was the conductor of the children's choir. So it
Okay.
was very from the beginning, I'm so thankful for her because from the beginning it was nothing complicated. It was just classic choral singing technique. I was a kid, my voice physically wasn't developed yet. And I just sang Caro Mio Ben 5 million times. And we've just focused on breathing, good posture and breathing. Just the simple things that we know are good about singing, like standing up straight, taking a deep breath, having, this feeling of yawn. We didn't even no complicated words like soft palate and passaggio and none of that. Just very simple singing. Was it on pitch? Uh, and the basics of music learning as well, sight singing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then when I got to undergrad, my teacher was James Taylor, who was in the Richmond area, I think.
Yes.
And that was the first time I ever met, an opera singer. I was like, I'm going to take voice lessons, from a professional opera singer. And it was totally different. And I really think what he did really great, and I think this is good in any teacher, he, at that age, let me sing whatever I wanted. I sang Madame Butterfly, which was completely inappropriate. Like just and he at that age he knew it didn't matter. I was, 18. What mattered was that I loved singing, that it felt good, that I could accomplish what I wanted to with my voice. And whatever was going to get me really, really into the art form.
Yeah.
I'm jazzed about it. And I think that's really important in a teacher because that ended when I went to grad school. Then it was all about business,
Hmm.
which was also a good experience, but it's harder.
Yeah.
And with uh, Professor Kukuro was who I took lessons from. She's great with coloratura voices. It was There were some scary lessons. She's a very hard teacher, but at the same time, that prepared me for what to expect from conductors and coaches in the professional world and not to get flustered, by that, even though there were some uncomfortable moments.
Mhm.
Um, so it, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's for different parts of your career and development, different teachers might be great and to know who you can trust. My current teacher now is a little bit more uh, you into the feel good of it.
Yeah.
We love singing. Singing should feel good. It's a joyous act. We're going to reduce fear. We're going to increase the joy and pleasure aspect, but we're at the same time going to take on some technical issues and steer the voice in certain directions.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing is somebody who understands how to teach in a more
Mhm.
modern way. Replacing knows with what to do instead.
Mhm.
Um, Understanding that your nervous system and how you feel has a lot to do with how you're going to sound. Um, I think when you're really in the career, having someone who understands repertoire and has done the job before.
Yeah.
So my teacher now she was a fest singer for, 30, 40, she's sung 30, 40 years in Germany. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, those are all great points. I mean, how do you recommend looking at a teacher's other students, see if they are successful? When you're kind of in the dark and you don't know much, and you're just trying to, for instance, like me, you don't have a family who's involved in music, or you're just totally out there on your own. how do you find someone? Do you go interview them? Do you look at their students, what they've accomplished? Ask people, what about that aspect?
I think a great place to start is look at their students. I think that's not going to tell the whole story, because some teachers teach any manner of students because it's all about the love of singing. They have professionals, they have, a 16, year old just starting out. But I think if you're wanting to be a professional, look at your favorite singers who are out there singing that you're just like, wow, that sounds so easy. And I can't do that thing with my voice, but I feel like in my body I should be able to. Look who they're studying with and try to get in contact with that person. Um, there are exceptions, but generally I find that teachers are like, great, yeah, I would love to teach another student and would be open to like hearing from more students. But that would be my recommendation is like look at their students and see how they're singing. And even ask them like, what's it like? How do they talk about breath? How do they talk about the passaggio? Or if you're struggling with something, or like how would your teacher explain this?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That's a great point to make. Okay, let's go into technique a little bit. And something you said at the beginning of our talk about um, sport being poetry. And you obviously are a runner. That's something you do every day. Is that right?
Almost. Some
Mostly,
days.
we have to give our bodies a break, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about singing technique. How important do you feel is being physically fit um, to becoming the kind of singer that you want to be? Um, why running in particular? Just I'm going to give you the floor. You just tell me everything you want to tell about that.
Yeah, I think that to be a opera singer, especially a fest singer, there's a level of fitness that you really, really need. And I want to be clear when I say this, fitness does not mean body shape or size. This is an internal fitness.
Yeah.
It's making sure that um like you aren't dealing with acid reflux. So you're going to have to pay a little bit attention to your diet, like for what your body needs so that that isn't at play, because that's one of the things that can cause a lot of vocal injury. And it is an extra risk for singers because especially fest singers, when we're performing and rehearsing a lot, we are pushing up and down on our diaphragm, and our stomach goes with it, and we're just shaking things a lot. And I get a double whammy as a runner because we have similar kind of internal little minor injuries going on. And heartburn is one of the biggest ones because we are just we're breathing a lot.
Yeah.
And so I would say that kind of health is really important, but also physical health. Um, as somebody who's a runner, I'm very, very aware of my foot strength and my balance.
Mhm.
And as an opera singer, somebody who's running around on stage and who knows what shoes that are not good for your feet. And, we can get a lot of foot and hip and knee injuries if you talk
Mhm.
to a lot of singers, plantar fasciitis, that whole thing. So being aware of those kind of issues, they're really endurance, wear and tear issues.
Yeah.
Same thing as like a vocal edema a lot of times can be. We've just been singing and singing and singing. Even if we have perfect technique, you walk in the same shoes 100 miles, you're probably going to get a blister.
Yeah.
So thinking of these things as fixable minor wear and tears that you get to know really well and get to learn how to manage, that is such a big part of vocal and physical health for singers. And that kind of have for me has gone along with running because I've been able to like learn from running and then map it onto singing in a way that's been really, really fun. I might not have made the association otherwise. And then I was like, oh, like I'm getting plantar fasciitis from my, rehearsal shoes. Do I need to be wearing them for 6 weeks, or can I just wear them for the tech rehearsal? And maybe that's a solution. These tiny little things
Yeah.
to keep yourself healthy, aside from the decades of work we put into vocal technique.
Do you feel like running helps a singer develop better breath control?
I I do with some caveats.
Okay.
So, I'm getting into the weeds with running here, but I'm really steering myself towards what's called the maffetone method. The people might know it about like zone 2 training. So it is not high intensity, not sprinting. I am not running fast. I am running slow, keeping my heart rate nice and low for long periods of time, which really is what we do when we're singing. I walk on stage for an opera and I have my Garmin. I'm in zone 2 or 3 heart rate. Zerbinetta, I was in zone 5. Strauss will put you in zone 5. And so you need that cardiovascular fitness. So when I'm running, I'm aware, okay, I'm going to train in zone 2 because that's pretty much the zone I want to stay in singing. And I want to make it as efficient as possible for my running and for my singing. And I think that can really help translate to singing. The only thing to watch out for that I found with running is when I do sprint days and I'm getting my heart rate up and I'm breathing really high,
Yeah.
my breathing muscles can get a little tired. So I'm sure to take a break, not sing really the next day and not run the next day, just
Mhm.
give my body some recovery time.
Yeah.
Um, because singing is about, yeah, creating this internal tension
Mhm.
with our muscles, but also being able to relax. Like we are doing this, not like
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And
In the
sometimes
flow.
running,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
running can get us stuck a little bit.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, I talk to different singers and different artists, and of course they have different ways of working out and things that they think, like lifting weights, all kind of things. So I appreciate your perspective on running because I just think in the balance and everything, I think is so important, just to life in general, but especially to be the performers, because it's very taxing. Singing is a lot of work. It's a
Yeah.
workout almost unto itself.
Yeah.
So to be able to have that stamina and the endurance, especially, I thank you for letting us know that you keep that at a lower level in your lower zone. I think that's really, really important. And
Mhm.
okay, so last question I'm gonna ask you, do you have a favorite opera role? If so, do you want to tell us what it is? I know exactly. So, is everything your favorite? What do you think?
Yeah, it's like whatever I'm working on currently is like my favorite. But I have to say, I thought always my favorite opera role would be Violetta. And I just finished that production in Daegu. Now that that's done, I was like, that's a lovely role. And then I started on Breaking the Waves, and I have to say, uh, it's the most unbelievable role that I've ever had the honor to perform. I would say either Breaking the Waves or my all-time favorite is Rosenkavalier.
Yeah.
I Singing Sophie is like my favorite. If you ask me what your favorite night, what you want to do, it'd be like sing Sophie with a great orchestra. Something like
Yeah.
that would probably that trio. That's probably it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Oh, Martha, we could just talk all day. I hate to end this, but we both have other things to do. But thank you so much for taking time out of your hugely busy schedule. It's been such an honor to have you on my Talking Shop series. And that's a wrap for today. I hope you'll stay tuned. Go to my website, lisaruthmusic.com. Listen to other artists, listen to Martha. We have a lot coming in store for 26, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.